stay tuned for that.
Very cool. And you heard it her first.
And you heard it first.
Yes, I have an exclusive now. Woohoo! Welcome to another episode of the WazaMedia Podcast. My name is JR. I am the CEO of this awesome, fun company, and we like to keep it fun here. I've got a very special guest today. I'm happy to have her on the show, and I just want to thank you for listening to our episodes and just being a huge fan. And just make sure you like and subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube, or if you're listening to the first time on the podcast, just keep coming back. We're glad to have you on. I am happy to introduce to you Babee Garcia. Babee, it's good to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me, JR. I'm very excited to talk about the media with you.
And we've been in contact. This is the first time we've actually met on camera and talked in this format. Most of our conversation has been through the Twitter sphere or on Instagram. And I want to thank you for helping my personal project along with a bunch of other photographers last summer with the 10,000 Headshots project. For our audience who doesn't know, this was a project that I personally helped along with 200 other photographers across the nation to give free headshots to those who had their jobs affected by COVID. So Babee, thank you for spreading the word to our local veterans who may have been impacted by that.
Yeah, it's no problem at all. I just saw the opportunity on LinkedIn and I figured, a lot of veterans would benefit from having a professional picture on their platforms so that they can get hired. And I saw the opportunity and, I was more than happy to pass it along to whoever needed it.
Babee, for our audience that doesn't know you, do you mind doing a quick rundown? But as we do on WazaMedia, our style is we like our audience, our guests to tell a little bit about their story, because at WazaMedia, we believe in the power of storytelling. So Babee, what is your story?
My name is Babee Garcia. I was named after Jennifer Grey's character from the movie Dirty Dancing back in the 80s. My father is a huge fan of that movie and insisted that I should be named after Jennifer Grey's character, but the spelling is changed differently. It's spelled with two E's instead of a Y, so Babee. I am currently a news producer for Good Morning Charlottesville, for CBS 19 News. I'm in Charlottesville, Virginia. Before that, I used to work as a digital and press assistant for Congresswoman Mikie Sherrill in New Jersey. And I was, putting together videos documenting, whenever she would go to an event to give a proclamation, just keeping track of legislation she's co-signed and, just highlighting her accomplishments as she is in office. I graduated from Montclair State University back in January 2019. I earned my bachelor's in journalism, and I knew I wanted to be a journalist since I was 8 years old, just paying attention to news, ABC 2020 in particular, and America's Most Wanted. So Barbara Walters, Diane Sawyer, Elizabeth Vargas, Oprah Winfrey too, just paying attention to how the art of the interview is done, and just hearing, compelling stories. And, I just knew I wanted to be immersed in that industry. And I also served in the Marine Corps on active duty. I was an aviation supply specialist from 2013 to 2016. And I basically stayed within my first and last duty station in New River, North Carolina. But I done some cool things and, earned my green belt in McMap and that kind of thing. And I'm very humbled and grateful for everything I learned in the Marine Corps, because all of the discipline, the skills, and everything that I learned in the military has really propelled and shaped my career in journalism.
That's awesome, Babee. And I agree with my former career path as a nurse in the Army and the switch to communications, I feel that I've been able to take some of the things that I had in my previous life in the military and label them now. And you have a unique first job with the military in the Marine Corps specifically. Is there anything in particular that you've been able to bring it over from the aviation side to journalism?
I think it's the attention to detail because my job mostly consisted of inventorying, and I know that kind of sounds boring, and at times it was, especially when you had to come to the warehouse on a weekend just to count bolts, nuts, aircraft material that's so tiny but can cost thousands of dollars. So, I'm paying attention to what is called the NINs, the 9-digit numbers to those parts, has prepared me to pay attention to the details in story scripts as a news producer. So those little kinds of tricks from the military has, kind of helped shape and help me in my career right now. And but there really isn't, other things within aviation that I can transfer over, but the qualities of being a military service member, such as, having discipline, commitment, integrity, those kinds of values still are, relevant to, what being a good journalist is all about. And that's, those are the things that I brought over to my current role now.
That's awesome. I remember those days of having to do inventory myself. And so yeah, that can be neat, pretty tedious, but yeah, that's a interesting way. And how have you been able to bring it over onto the journalism side? One thing that sticks out with me, having been a nurse in the emergency room, is I did a lot of codes. When a car crash comes in, and I'm working with the team, and the one thing I learned the most is that we see all the TV shows where everyone's running around and panicking inside an emergency room. That really shouldn't happen. And the one thing I've been able to carry from doing codes and doing resuscitation, chest compressions, trying to bring someone back to life, is the first thing was to check my own pulse. Because if I'm stressed and in a panic mode, then the rest of the team is going to be in panic mode. So if I'm calm, I'm collected, I'm able to lead the team. And likewise, I've been able to bring that into crisis communication. So if you're freaking out, then everyone's going to freak out. So that's something that I felt like I brought. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, I could agree as well, just being calm under pressure. Breaking news happens, there's a shooting, there's a fire, the weather is just out of control, and you have to, stay focused to the mission and tell these stories, because one wrong error can misinform the public. And like a mother bringing her kids to school, may be unaware and unprepared for the road conditions outside, if a natural disaster is happening. So it's very important to, make sure that you're focused, and you stay calm under pressure, and you just know that, like, you're going to get through it. And you just have to evaluate and assess the situation with a level head, you know
Totally agree. Baby, I want to move to the meat and potatoes of this podcast. Today we have Babee on because we want to talk about telling your story, about anyone being able to tell their story through the media. And we're going to dive into a couple questions about the relevance, a little background, and then lastly, we're going to give our audience a couple tips. Actually, Babee, you're going to give us a couple tips for our audience about how they can work with the media to tell their story. So, Babee, first question I have for you is, with all the digital media outlets that we have, we've got all the Facebooks and all the Twitters, and then Clubhouse is super popular right now, especially this week. They just announced their monetization plan, which is interesting. Where, well, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole. That's a whole another rabbit hole. But just platforms like that gaining popularity, is there any reason why, or is there any advantage to working with the media to tell your story when it looks like anyone can just go out there and produce their own stuff?
And I think that that's a very excellent question. You have to think like being able to tell your story through the media, it has power, it has relevance, it has impact on communities. I work for a local TV news station in Charlottesville, and whenever there is a shooting going on, the public needs to know about it. And if you have any tips on a suspect, that those kind of things are important. And also just telling stories that you know kind of connect people and are relatable, like anything like struggling with health issues. I think that, you know, telling your story, if you're going through some kind of problem, with health issues, then it's kind of triggering a community, a bond with others, to say, hey, I feel this way too. And, what are resources that I can look into for help? And that is the power and effects of storytelling and in journalism in general. It's, you know, updating the communities and public about important information that they need to know. Most recently, COVID vaccine information. You know, where and when can people get vaccinated in the area? Um, you know, Unemployment details, PPP loans. Just those are some examples of how people, and why people need to bring tips to newsrooms, because it helps us as reporters, news producers, anchors tell and do our jobs more efficiently. You know, it's our jobs in news to tell the public, why this story matters, doing it in a timely manner and making sure that it's accurate. So that's what I have to say about, encouraging more people to tell, their stories. And, we see them, we hear them, and, we as journalists will get to them as best as we can if we have all the evidence to tell that compelling story.
One thing that just jogged my memory as you were talking is just thinking about that there's still as a local TV station that you're at, there's a trust factor that your station has built over the years. And so I was thinking that, with how much credibility and reputation that your outlet has in your local community, how it makes sense for someone who has a local story for your community to go through your TV station to tell it, uh, mainly because you have that reputation.
Yeah, and I understand how people, don't fully trust journalists. I mean, there's a negative rep for reporters. Sometimes I see criticism on, social media platforms. Technology is making it a whole lot easier for people to give their opinions, especially towards media workers. So, with all that hesitancy, um, just know that, you know, journalists are working tirelessly to um, make sure that the details within their stories are accurate, and, they're done efficiently, and, they're and carefully. So, I mean, there's a competitive nature with outlets, just rushing in to, tell the stories. so that people can get it as quick as possible. But, there may be errors in it. And, there's a lot of journalists out there that go for quality over quantity. And then there are others that, do the opposite. They go for the rush, the amount of stories they can produce in this amount of time. But, you just have to be mindful of, who you're sending the story to, making sure that, hey, I want to remain anonymous. This is what, information that I have. And I want to make sure that it's told correctly. So just making sure that you're communicating what your account, so that we can investigate and do our jobs, and just do the best that we can to make sure that you know we're just performing our responsibilities to the best of our ability, the best of our ability as journalists.
And what you're talking about, Babee, really goes into what the professional role of a journalist does. I know there's the argument that anyone can just pick up a camera and just broadcast, and citizen journalists that can just live stream at any event, but they're untrained. They don't know the writing process. They don't know, in order for a balanced article to come out, you need both sides of the picture. And
Mhm.
so the process that you mentioned, I feel really goes into the professional part of being a journalist is, crossing your T's, dotting your I's, making sure you're looking for accuracy, because misinformation is something that you don't want to have out there, especially on topics you mentioned about, say, COVID. It's still a very hot topic a year later since it all went down last year. So having right information, the important and accurate out there, I feel is definitely important. The other thing that came to mind is that while there may be criticisms about journalism as a whole, there's definitely a lot of criticisms about social media and who's influencing it, and who's putting these narratives out there. So at least with journalism, that there's trained professionals who have gone to school, who've done the work, and who are doing or making sure that things are accurate. And I think that leads with the credibility of leveraging and using the media to help tell your story.
Absolutely. And you mentioned balance. And I think that's a huge, um, you know, a huge component when telling these stories, because, like, you don't want, someone to say, hey, why was only one person interviewed, when, there's two sides to every story. There's two sides to, a coin. And, I just had a situation the other day where we had um a video about the candidates for who's running for Virginia's for the governor of Virginia. And, we had a soundbite for one of those candidates, but because this is politics, we have to be extra careful in making sure that all candidates are heard. So I didn't air that specific soundbite from the virtual debate that the candidates had, because I wanted to just recap what happened, between the candidates, and just, just say with text and have a video pictured within the screen. So I didn't play a sound from one particular person, because we have to be neutral. We have to give everyone a fair chance in, saying, you know what issues that they're going to be fighting for in the gubernatorial race.
That's a great example of making sure that you're neutral and balanced. Maybe I want to move to another question that I have is, I want to bring it back to storytelling. In your eyes, when you're looking at stories that you're working, what makes a story compelling for a newscast? When someone has a tip, what things do you look for the most that make that may have relevance to your local community, but also for your station?
I look for impact. You know, some of these compelling stories can be emotional, um, just relatable, as I mentioned earlier. Just stories that affect people in the community, like um I remember distinctively one of our reporters did a story about a patient and his struggle in getting a lung transplant. And it kind of tugged my heartstrings. And, you know, people it's hard to watch those kinds of stories and listen to, but um, it just capturing struggles of everyday life, those stories are compelling to me. And I'm sure to many viewers. Just stories like, people losing their jobs, the harsh realities of what's going on currently in this time, with COVID, people getting impacted by COVID, in a health way, financially, um, with virtual learning for their kids, just those kinds of stories. I'm looking for, how it relates to other people, why, why it matters and why other people care or should care about it. Stories that keep government officials and politicians and those higher up accountable, for city government, any actions that they're doing, because, kind of highlighting leadership in our communities, it's a big deal in journalism, especially in local news stations. Um, just anything that can affect people's daily lives, I think is a compelling story.
Those are great ones. And one type of story that stuck out to me, I was watching it from from Lester Holt. I think it was a couple weeks ago. It was when 1 year of the pandemic was declared here in America. Um, there was a segment that he brought up about what was the last picture you took before the pandemic hit. And so it was a interesting narrative about different people, for citizens, but also some government officials and some celebrities that I think he had, they were telling about that last photo that they took with their phone or something. And it even mentioned that the last photo that Dr. Fauci had when he had his birthday in person with other people. And then he interviewed him about that, and then he had his birthday recently, and it's not the same. And that was relatable, because I looked at my phone once I looked at that broadcast and that segment, and thinking, what was the last picture I took? And for me, it was I was in a class, with FEMA, about a basic information officer course with crisis management. And it was right before the national emergency was declared, and we took a class picture around that time. And um, I think that was the last photo that I remember before it all went down. So
Wow.
definitely on the relatable side. So I see that as compelling. I'm glad you brought that up, baby.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up that story with Lester Holt as well. I didn't see it, but I would love to. I love stories that think outside the box like that. It's just a question, like, just a simple question like, what's the last picture that you took before this pandemic started? And, it got me thinking automatically, like, I just want to look through my phone. And, just I think stories that are compelling, they also bring change. And, it makes you evaluate changes, in a system, in, just the way the world is moving forward. And, you know, um, And a good example of that is, covering racial injustice and protests and movements that are, fighting and advocating for change. And you know, it's definitely something to think about whenever I'm broadcasting stories for our morning show.
Speaking of your morning show, and I understand that you are the producer, um, want to move to the tip portion of this podcast. Is there any tips that you would give anyone who is looking to tell their story through the media in general, but or more specifically through your outlet? Is there something that someone needs to think more about, develop on their own, or what information are you looking for when you're trying to get a story out?
Well, I think the first thing is to, look up your local newsroom on, Google. I think that, internet searching and making sure that, you have their contact information, their phone number and email, would be a great place to start. And then when you're trying to communicate with them, making sure that, you indicate, hey, I want my information to be on or off record. It lets us know, like, hey, this person does or doesn't want to be on camera. We will respect your decision either way, as long as the information is accurate. Um, and and then when you're writing to us or calling us, you're giving us, like, other sources, other people that we can potentially reach out to verify the information that you're telling us. Um, I mean, we also can fish out other, contacts so that we can build a stronger story with fairness and integrity. But passing along information on your side, plus, any other people that can testify or vouch for you and agree with you, I think, would be helpful for us to do our jobs better. And so, yeah, and I think that that's the bulk of the communication process between the public feeding us tips, and for us to take that information and do what we can with it.
Awesome, baby. Thank you for those tips. Is there anything else you'd like to add, or anything that our audience should know?
Oh, I also didn't mention this earlier, but I'm part of the board of directors and the director of digital strategy and content for military veterans in journalism. We've been around since 2019, and we're just really trying to get veterans hired into this industry. Um, I work with my colleagues who are just hard workers, and I learn from them each and every day. I volunteer. Um, it's non-paid. My work for this nonprofit, and we're just really trying to, get these guys hired and, just help them network with other media professionals. So if you're interested in being a volunteer and knowing more about us, you can visit mvj.network. You can shoot me an email at babee, BABEE, at mvj.network. You can also reach out on my professional social media accounts and the MVJ social media platforms as well. And yeah, that's all I wanted to make sure I promote, and encourage people listening to check out.
Our public affairs soldiers, Marines, sailors, airmen, they've done great stuff in service, and it's awesome that you're working with a nonprofit to help get them out on the front lines on the civilian side. So thank you, baby, for doing that, and also with the MVJ. Um, how can we find you on social? You mentioned the your other email address, but how can we follow you and also your TV station?
Sure. So my newsroom is CBS 19 News. So you can, just literally type us on Google and access our website. We got, our stories up on the web over there, plus our Weather Authority app. And on my professional accounts, you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Babee Garcia. Um, and just feel free to follow me and reach out to me. I live for networking. So and especially um through a computer nowadays because of the pandemic. So yeah, so you can definitely reach out to me there.
Awesome, baby. And I am gonna reach out to you and through your network. This is exclusive news that the 10,000 headshots project that I worked on last year that you helped push out, and I appreciate that. There's some behind the scenes movement of year 2 of getting that out. So
Wow.
you heard it here first. So the goal is just to help those who need to get back in the workforce, and especially for our veterans who are transitioning out of active service to civilian life. They're gonna need one too. So I will give you more details of when, because I put my hat in the ring to help facilitate with this project again, and I would love to help you and your organization to reach out to our fellow service members who are in public affairs looking to get into journalism, and they need to be presentable out there.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, it took me over a year to get my first journalism job outside of college. And that's with the hard work that I invested, in the military, at Montclair State University. And, you would think that everything that I was doing right, would lead me somewhere quicker. But, it all of this matters how you brand yourself, how you create your online portfolio to what your professional headshot looks like. All of this, these little intricate details, it matters when employers are out there fishing for candidates to hire. So to hear that there is, year 2 of these professional headshots for veterans, I look forward to, passing it along again for sure. And just want to say thank you to you and the other photographers who are chipping in their time and expertise to do this.
We're happy to do so, baby. And it's not just only for veterans, but it's the plan is just for, we're going to open the aperture to those who need one, who are unemployed. COVID is still affecting us. The pandemic's still hitting us. There's still a lot of people who are needing help. And this is just one small way as photographers that we can help and give back to our community. And that's what we're hoping to do by providing these headshots.
Super cool.
Baby, thank you again for being on the show today, and thanks for giving us some tips. And we're looking forward to seeing you back on the screen. I'm gonna pop on tomorrow's news and see if I could stream your network or your outlet from my home computer from where I live in the DC area.
Yeah, definitely check us out. I have some other stuff in the works too. I can't say much about it, but it looks like I will be covering the military beat within my own community. So stay tuned for that.
Very cool. And you
Putting
heard
a
it her first.
and you heard it first.
Yes, I have an exclusive now. Woohoo!
You gave me one, so I had to give you something back.
I thought that was only fair and balanced to do so.
How fitting.
Thank you, baby.
No problem. Bye, JR.
And Thanks for watching our video. If you want to learn more about WazaMedia, go to our main channel over here. And if you want to see more podcast episodes, go over here. See you next time.